Oh, what do we got here? Let's go. The box finally arrived. Hey y'all, welcome back to Seriously Stump'd. Do you feel like your BX23S needs a little Tim the Toolman Taylor in its life? You know, a little extra firepower? If so, stick around today because I'm going to show you the best and likely the only way to turbocharge your Kubota BX23S. But hey, if that doesn't put some fuel in your life or some extra air, y'all can stay stumped. We'll catch you guys on the next one. All right, Stump fam, let's dive right in. This box is kind of heavy. Let's take Barry the Blade and cut this box open. And let me go ahead and tell you guys a few particulars. I purchased this from HydrosPlus. And HydrosPlus is run by a guy named Kevin. He sent us this letter right here. And it says, thank you for choosing HydrosPlus, the HydrosPlus Turbo for the BX23S series tractors. You're going to love the extra umph you get from the turbo to get you through those tough spots or to allow you to run lower RPMs and still get the job done. All that with the added bonus of higher efficiency and lower emissions for you green thumbs out there. But a little bit about HydrosPlus. They're a small family shop, and while they need to make a few bucks in their process, their first objective is to make you happy with your purchase, or in this case, me, because I feel like a kid on Christmas getting to bust this box open. And that's why my wife can never buy me gifts, because as soon as stuff like this comes out, I go ahead and jump in. But it says, our first objective is to make you happy and happy with your purchase. If there's any issue with your order, reach out to them, and they have an installation video, but that's why I'm gonna make this installation video too, because if you've ever watched anything from Kevin, you'll know that that guy is a mechanical genius, and he puts in a lot of extra like whys behind the what of what he's doing, and I'm strictly gonna try to focus on just the how to, the what. All right, take this, put it on this of your tractor, and that way you can get that extra umph. And then he also gives you a packing list right here, and as you can see, I'll throw it up on the screen as well. It's quite extensive of all the parts in here, so I'm gonna try to label those, and I'm gonna get to doing that, and then I'll get you guys back in the loop after I take the hood off the BX23S, so stick around, it's gonna be a great one. All right, a quick overview. We got Kevin over here from HydrosPlus whispering sweet nothings into our ear, but we got our custom manifold that HydrosPlus designed. Here's our turbo, obviously, and it's got all of our FME protectors all over it. Then we got our oil supply hose here with a banjo fitting on the end, and then we have a banjo bolt with some copper compression washers. And then we got our oil return hose. We got our vent tube with our vent. Our vent will go into our intake tube. You'll have to cut that hole unless you want to put it somewhere else. Kevin recommends putting it in your intake tube. Then we have our charging tube. Then we have our DPF muffler and our empty bypass DPF muffler. So you get to decide which one you want to use. All of this is 304 stainless. This is our upper tube. This is our lower tube. All of these connect with our V-clamps. Then we have 4 T-clamps of various sizes. We have an oil supply T. You want to make sure that you can see through it. And as you can see, I can see through this, because if you don't, you won't have your actual oil supply and you can mess things up real quick. We have our intake vent cap, our oil return fitting, our crankcase return. This will mount on your tractor. This one here with the 2 bolts will mount onto your turbo. And then we have our 3 gaskets, 2 stainless steel, and then this gasket here is for our oil return fitting. Obviously our exhaust flange, and then we have varying bolts here. So our hardware, 2 M6s, 2 M10s, and 4 M8s, and they're all in this bag here. And now that we have everything accounted for in accordance with the checklist, we're good to start disassembling our tractor. So I'm not going to bore you with that, but I need to take the hood off and go ahead and get the muffler off and the exhaust manifold that comes with the tractor, get all that stuff off, and then I'll fill you guys in after I do that. Got the hood off. It's got these push pin zip tie connectors here. One of them stayed intact, the other 2 broke, so you can easily pick those up on Amazon or anywhere else. And then the other ones are like the expandable ones that you can clamp from the back side. We got those off. And then to actually remove the hood, you just remove these 4 9/16 inch bolts right here on either side, and then you can pop it right off. And all of those connectors were just for our headlights, so we just got that dangling here, and now we're good to start disassembling the rest now that we got it fully open for you guys to be able to see. So you need to grab your favorite 10mm open end wrench. I'm gonna take this hot plate off of the manifold. It is a one-piece unit, so you can leave it on, but I like more room when I'm working, so I'm gonna take this hot plate off. Go ahead and use an open end wrench to get these 3 off here, and then there's 3 below down there that you're gonna need to get off, and for those you're gonna need a socket or probably a box end wrench, but whatever you can figure to get in there to get those off. And then the muffler at that point will only be held on by this, so go ahead and pop that off. Pop this off via the 4 clamps right there, and then we got this tube right here with these compression clamps. You'll need to squeeze those and get this tube out of the way. As you can see, those 3 holes in there, they're kind of tight, but I was able to get an impact socket set on the end of my drill and get all those off. Open-ended wrenches for the top, but they are Knuckle Buster 3000, so be careful when you're taking those off. We got our throttle cable here held on by the zip tie that we got to clip off. You can always just replace the zip tie, easy day, but we need to get it out of the way to where we can actually get this off. Oh, that's on there. Wow. Oh. All right, got that off. Woo! And I went ahead and threw me some FME tape here, that way I don't have any debris falling in there. And this zip tie that I cut was actually removable. I could have pushed this tab and popped it right out, but I got plenty of zip ties, so I'm not worried about that. I got everything off now. Go ahead and leave your gasket installed. And then I like to put everything in a box over here for my factory stuff in case I ever go to sell this or I want to revert it back to factory settings or factory configurations. I'll be able to, because that's what this kit is designed for. But now we should have ample working room to be able to install our new manifold from the kit and do everything else. So let's get into the assembly process now. One of the first steps of assembling the turbo pieces and parts is to get this oil sending unit out of the way. That way you can install your T. And I got a 15/16 inch socket here, and you can just back that out because you're gonna need some thread sealant and that T with the orifice that I showed you earlier, and it'll go right here. Kevin said it shouldn't leak too much, just a few drops, and that's pretty much what I've seen. It's gonna stop there. I might put a little pan below, that way I'm environmentally friendly. I'm gonna go ahead and take my intake cap vent right here and go ahead and put it on this while I have this room. You can do this pretty much at any step, and then this port right here is what we're gonna route back to our vent on our turbo later. And Kevin did this at a later step, but I am at a standstill as I'm waiting on my wife to get back here with some thread sealant. And I'm gonna just go ahead and throw this cap on here now. And I think it's a better viewpoint for you guys to be able to see exactly where this cap goes. But you just squeeze the clamp, slide it on, and it's good to go. So we have our custom manifold. Get that sticker out of here because that'll melt. And we need to slide it on right here. There it is. Remember to leave that stainless steel gasket there, and then you can use your 10mm nuts and bolts from your factory parts to mount this back up. Also, my drip pan right here, it paid dividends because I had quite the number of gravity checks trying to get my fingers in here with all these little bolts and washers and nuts. All right, now we get to play with our turbo a little bit. So we grab our turbo and we take our steel gasket. It only goes one way. Go ahead and get all this pollen off of it. And then we take these M8 button heads and use them to affix our exhaust flange to our turbo. And now we continue on our turbo. So we take our oil return fitting and we're gonna mount it right here with our green gasket. So we get our FME, our foreign material exclusion device, out of the way, take our gasket, and then use the smallest bolts that come in the kit to mount that fitting right here. We'll see if I can do this while reaching around the camera. We want to take our intake tube at this point and go ahead and install our vent right here. So I think this is about a 1/2 inch or so. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to basically drill a hole in my intake tube to install this vent right here. And I'm going to do it to where it's pretty much center. And I'm going to just go in to where I see about a 1/2 inch and then try from there. Oop, don't walk. All right, so it's wanting to walk on me a little bit. So that's pretty much the size. And now I'm just gonna finagle this in here and then throw this nut on the end of it and we'll be good to go. All right, so you grab your two middle-sized, because you have 4 T-band clamps, so you want to grab your 2 middle-sized T-clamps, and I wanted HydrosPlus to be up, but it would have been hidden by these clamps anyways. And then you take your hose that I identified earlier, get that screwed on, and then it goes right here. I can't remember if I told you guys earlier, but this return line just goes on right here, and you got to give it a little bit to get on there because it's just a rubber hose with this wrapping on the outside, and then you got a standard hose clamp, and then you can tighten down your T-clamp up here with a 10mm, and then this part is all good to go. Now we grab our beautiful turbo here, and we got our T-clamp here, and we got our final gasket with our 3 bolts lined up right here. So we're going to slide our turbo in our silicone connection piece up top and then try to get these bolts here started through our gasket, and then we just got to tighten everything up. All right, a couple tips and tricks for this. I finally got it hooked up. Make sure you have a real Allen set. These things here are pieces of crap, and I couldn't find my actual Allen set and didn't want to keep spending time looking for it. So I ended up having to cut that one with my portable bandsaw. And then another tip is that I would run these bolts through your turbo because one of them wasn't tapped all the way through, and I kind of had to use the bolt to tap it through the manifold. But I got them all good, and my stainless steel gasket is compressed, and now we can move on to the next steps. Now we can take our remaining charging tube, get our FME cover out of the way. That way we don't suck up any tape into our manifold there. And then we can go ahead and get our remaining 2 T-clamps on our tube. And then tighten those down. And we're inching our way closer and closer. At this point, you want to go ahead and get your factory nut off of your muffler and go ahead and mount whichever one you're going to use. I'm going to use the DPF, not the DPF bypass. So you go ahead and mount it right here. Get your V-band clamp hooked up to your exhaust tube, good to go. I will say that he's going to release a competition pipe that's not ready yet that'll bypass all of this and give you that real loud sound. I'm not into all of that, so I'm going to go ahead and mount this DPF one up here. And to do that, you got to use these V-band clamps and our other exhaust tube right here, and then essentially you just get everything lined up and then hook up your V-band clamp. So my wife made it back with my thread sealant, and I got my T-valve here that I mentioned earlier, and we're going to go ahead and get it screwed in. Kevin said he didn't really remember what the exact torque spec was of this, but we can't hook up this here until we get that all the way cinched down. So I'm going to use this 20mm here and get it twisted up, and once I get it right, then I'll be able to screw this in, and I just got to make sure that port is sticking that way. It was after I installed this that I realized that I really over-torqued this and didn't even put any thread sealant on it, because for some reason I thought the thread sealant was clear, but it was actually white, and then when I tried to back it out, I realized I stripped everything. So just be mindful to not over-torque it here and to actually apply your thread sealant. I guess I should point out that if you wanted to do an oil change, you could do that now, and you could go ahead and cinch this down into your T-valve prior to, but this way seems to work well as long as you got a, what did I say, a 20mm socket, and I believe this is 20mm as well, and you'll need an open-end wrench. That way you don't have to use some channel locks like I do and booger up your face on it a little bit, but it should all be good. And then you get your electrical connection buttoned back up, and we can move on to hooking our oil supply line from here all the way up to our turbo. Stump fam, full transparency as always, Kevin is going to send me another one of these parts because I backed it out realizing that I didn't have any sealant on it and it was just some liquid that was coming up out of the tube. And when I did that, I realized I guess I had put too much on it and stripped out the thread. So I'm gonna have to get me a tap and die set, or at least a tap with the 1/8 to 28 BSPT, and run back through here, and then I'll be able to use his new tee that he sends to get it installed in there. But I'm sure he'll send that soon, and then once I get this in, and then I can get this in there, and then I can get this connected up as I showed you, I can connect this end of the hose to the end of the new tee, all in there. That'll be good to go. And then up here I got our compression washers all hooked up, and I'll be able to clamp that down, and that'll send the oil from down there into the turbo. And then the last thing I got to do is I got to take this plate off here, reuse the gasket and the bolts, and go ahead and mount this up. That way I can hook in my final leg here, and it goes from here up to our port up there that we put in earlier with that gasket. So I'm going to go ahead and do all of that off camera, and then we'll be good to go and go ahead and be able to fire this thing up and test it. The only steps I'll show you here in a second on the video will be I will be adjusting down here to give myself some more fuel. Since we have more air, you want to have more fuel as well, and we'll try to get those dialed in exactly to where we're not pouring out black smoke over here. It's been a couple days, but I cannot speak highly enough about Kevin from HydrosPlus. I told him the issue I ran into of me stripping this out, and he sent me a new one. No questions asked, easy day. Can't recommend him enough. So we're gonna go up here, put some thread sealant on this, get it installed, let it set overnight, and then I'll finish up the turbo install. Here's the new tee that Kevin just sent. I got my thread sealant all on there, and I got the high temperature stuff, obviously. Here's the old one that I destroyed, and then I tried to cut the destroyed threads off and continue to install this, but it did not work. And now once we get it installed, we'll go ahead and hook up the rest of everything. And then I went ahead and cleaned out the threads with this Icon tap and die kit from Harbor Freight, and it is a 1/8 by 28 BSPT thread that you'll need to do if you have to do this, but ideally you don't because you won't over torque yours when you install it. So I'm going to go ahead and get her installed now. I got it all installed, buttoned back up, and then I didn't look through this one, but to make sure that my orifice is open, I shoved this wire through it just to ensure it can actually have our oil flow as desired. And we're gonna go ahead and hook up our final hose. And then here's our banjo fitting up here. We got that hooked up, and then here's our other hoses. So here's our vent running down to our diaphragm down here, and then here's our oil return coming from the bottom of the turbo here down into our housing on that side of the engine. And now we've reached the point where we got to take this jam nut right here, this little tamper nut, off. That way we can back out a 10mm bolt that's on the inside that will allow our tractor to supply more fuel to be able to keep up with the amount of air that we're adding via the turbo. And to do that, you should be able to take a screwdriver and wedge here on this little tamper nut, not where the skirt is, and you should be able to get it to a point to where you can then back it off so you can actually perform your adjustment. And what Kevin did is he backed it all the way out, he marked it and then backed it all the way out, realized it was 8 turns, and then put it back in 1 turn. I'm going to back it all the way out with a 10mm socket, and then from there I'm going to put it back in 3 turns, then I'll be at my initial test. But I'm going to do that off camera because I'm having to use this screwdriver here, and I think I need 2 hands. But basically you just wedge a screwdriver in here and get it off. And if you can't get that, then you might have to use like a reciprocating saw or something to vibrate it loose. Here it is, and here's where you can see that little skirt, and essentially you're just trying to get it wedged to the point where you can actually back it off. And then here's the nut. Let's focus that way, and that's what we're going to back all the way out, and then I'm going to put it back in 3 turns. Here it is in all its glory, and then I just have basically 3 threads left, and I'm going to just put this back in, give it a little snug with the 10mm socket, and then I think it'll be good for a test run and see if I need more fuel later. But I'm trying to just maximize the efficiency of the tractor and not over fuel it, because the last thing I want is to have a bunch of black smoke coming out. But this is where we're going to be adjusting it as we go. All right, here's the moment of truth. I was going to let that thread sealant set up overnight, but I really got to hear how this sounds real quick. And like I told you guys before, I'm a certified YouTube mechanic, so we should be good to go. Woo! That's never gonna get old, Stump fam. But hey, a few final notes from me. Remember not to over torque your stuff. Be mindful of what torque you need, because remember, with Benford tools, you don't need instructions. All you need to do is watch Seriously Stump videos. So hopefully you guys learned a little something today. You're no longer stumped. You know how to turbocharge your tractor. You can hit up HydrosPlus to get you one yourself. And as always, stay safe and stay hydrated. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Oh man, I'm gonna be able to put a bush hog on the back of this thing and the mid-mount mower. I'm gonna be chopping down all the grass. It's gonna be sick.